Hi, everybody. It's Josh with Talk About Trek, and we are back again to talk about a Star Trek book. This time we are talking about The Valiant by Michael Jan Friedman. And this is, as you can see, the first Stargazer adventure. Now, it's not the first Stargazer adventure written. Of course, it was Reunion, which is one of the. It's right up there. It's like right after the 16th numbered novel, written by Michael Jan Friedman, where we're first introduced to the crew of the Stargazer and Picard's first command and all that. So, but this is kind of like the prequel to that, right? So we're going back. We're getting to see how exactly did he get command of the Valiant, and I got to say, as I typically say after I read a Star Trek book. That was a pretty good book. I enjoyed that immensely, actually, and I'll give you several reasons why. First off, I love when a Star Trek book gives me a chance, or rather, almost a need, to go back and reference an episode, especially an episode that maybe I haven't seen in a long time. And this actually gave me the chance to do that with two different episodes, both from the original series. So that was awesome. And then the other thing that this book does is it gives you, of course, Picard backstory, right? Which is awesome. And it really does a great job of showing you how he takes his first command, like the decisions that he makes, and you can just kind of see immediately kind of that he was destined for great things, right? Of course, here you have on the cover, as you can see, you've got Picard with hair, which is a strange sight, right? But that's okay. You can picture him bald if you want. But the Stargazer itself is a very, very cool starship. And I'm peeking over here now just to see if I have one that I could grab, just to show for fun. Oh, wait, hang on. Maybe we have a micro machine version that is readily reachable. We do. I don't know why it's yellow though, because I don't think it's yellow in canon, of course. But here is the Stargazer, as you can see. Micro machine version, so it's a little bit small, and it's yellow, but 4 warp nacelles, right? Very cool design. Now, of course, if you know the history, you know that the Stargazer was lost, I think, at the Battle of Maxia against the Ferengi, and then Picard and crew kind of like drifted for a while after that. And there's there's a lot of episodes that kind of delve back into that too. I think Tapestry covers that a little bit, maybe. And again, that episode there where that guy is making him relive his time on the Stargazer, right? Oh man, I should have watched that episode. Well, anyway, the episodes that I did watch in preparation for this were the original series episode where No Man Has Gone Before, because this is basically kind of directly pulling from that. And then also the second or third season episode, By Any Other Name, right? Because there is the aliens in that, the Kelvins, are the ones that are a character in this one. So let's actually go to I'm looking around the thing here. Boom. Our first picture. So this story, The Valiant, centers on the Valiant, which is a ship from, I think, maybe 300 years ago in Picard's time here. And they attempted to cross through the Great Barrier, and some things went terribly wrong. And you can see in this episode, this is where they recover their message buoy, and kind of find out that they possibly were forced to destroy their ship because of what happened, right? Now, also, we do have interesting also that in this book we have a Kelvin that kind of comes along. And here's a picture of a Kelvin here. We'll go back here to these two that you first meet. And they are a very highly advanced race from I think the Andromeda galaxy, right? And they take human form. Typically they look like 1,000-tentacled monsters or something like that. But you can see here they have these belt packs that they can use to freeze people. They can turn people into dodecahedrons. All sorts of crazy stuff. So I thought it was interesting that they just included one of these characters, and it was to. Well, we'll get into that, I guess. But what I liked about being, I don't know, having to go back and watch this episode was this is the only episode where you get to see the inside of Scotty's quarters, which I thought was very cool. So here you can see Scotty, and part of his mission was to basically get this Kelvin as drunk as possible so he could take his little belt thing away. And he is successful there in the end. So anyway, let's get back to the Valiant here. From the back. 300 years ago, the USS Valiant was destroyed during an ill-fated attempt to cross the legendary galactic barrier. Starfleet had always assumed that the Valiant had perished with all hands aboard, until a pair of unusual humanoids arrived at Starbase 209, claiming to be the descendants of a handful of Valiant survivors who found refuge on an M-class planet beyond the barrier. Even more shocking, the visitors warned that a hostile alien species, the Nayud, are preparing to invade the galaxy. Uncertain of how much the stranger's story to believe, Starfleet orders the USS Stargazer to investigate at once. Lieutenant Commander Jean-Luc Picard is the second officer on the Stargazer, a young man who has yet to command a vessel of his own. He soon develops a special bond with one of the visitors, a strikingly beautiful woman who has inherited mysterious psychic abilities from her alleged Starfleet ancestors. But can Picard truly trust her? Let's find out. So this book is written in 3 parts. Well, basically they call it, book 1, book 2, book 3, right? And it starts on book 1, which starts you on the Valiant 300 years ago, which is awesome because now you are getting. This is awesome because you're getting backstory from, like the 3rd episode of Star Trek. So that is fantastic in its own right, and it's not even just a small segment of the book either. The first 50 pages are on board the Valiant, and basically, and it's kind of like almost a mirror of where no man has gone before, right? Where the crew is sent through the galactic barrier, and when they do that, immediately some crew are killed, right? They don't have the same kind of shields that, Kirk and crew had later on. So it affects them. Some of the crew, I guess, that had the higher quotient of ESP are killed, or maybe not high enough. But then the ones that could, and in this one, there was just the one guy, and I did take some notes here, and there was basically one guy that survived and got the glowing silver eyes of Gary Mitchell, and started to exhibit, those same powers that Gary Mitchell exhibited in that episode. So, and that was Agnerson, all right? The captain, his name is Tarasco, Carlos Tarasco. So this Agnerson starts kind of exhibiting these powers, and, it's kind of crazy how quickly, and again, it's the same thing in the episode, how it goes from 0 to 100, right? From oh no, this guy's showing off some weird powers, to, oh no, this guy could destroy or change all of humankind. We cannot possibly let him escape, right? And that becomes kind of the name of the first book there, as the captain of the Valiant tries to kind of shut this guy down, get his crew off of the ship. And then in the end, basically the only way he's able to do this is by setting his ship for self-destruct and kind of leaving himself there to distract the guy, weaken him, and kind of make him stay on the ship while the rest of the crew gets to the escape pods. So that's how the first book even ends. And you kind of left right there with the, that the crew makes it to the escape pods, the Valiant is destroyed, and, the captain goes down with the ship, right? And then you get to meet the crew of the Stargazer. And, of course, this is not Captain Picard's Stargazer. This is Captain... Let me just try... Ruhalter. Dathan Ruhalter, who is a tall, barrel-chested, and powerfully built, and for all that, quick like a cat. But anyway, the book starts out in a very Picard fashion, with him practicing fencing with his captain. And basically they're called to Starbase 209 and given the mission. And the mission is investigate what these two Magnians claim, right? So they were, they came through the galactic barrier, and according to them, and this is one of them is Serenity Santana, and the other is I didn't write down his name, so we'll just say the other is some other guy who has no bearing on the story anyway, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, they're sent on a mission where basically they need to see if this is true, right? What they're being told by these two Magnians is that on the other side of the barrier, there is this warlike race called the Nyud, right? And they are gearing up for a massive invasion of the Federation. So they were sent to warn them, and just kind of see if they could get a ship over there to verify what was going on. And that's the current plan. And then along the way, they pick up this Calvin that we were talking about earlier, and his name is Jomar. Now, the Calvins have some sort of history with the Nyud, so he can help to adapt the Stargazer shields so that when the Nyud start firing these Vidrion weapons, which are very dangerous, they'll have some defense against that, right? That's the plan. So now you have the basic idea. They decide that they will go ahead and investigate. They leave one of the Magnians behind on the starbase, and they take Serenity Santana with them, towards the barrier. Along the way, you get to kind of meet the crew. And again, this is the second time we've met them, but the first time we've met this command crew. So you have Captain I just said it, Ruhalter, and then Commander Leach, right? And Commander Leach is a very different kind of officer from Picard. And you can kind of sense right away that there's this kind of, he seems very antagonistic of Picard, maybe thinking Picard's coming up after his spot, right? And the captain seems to favor Picard and Picard's opinions more as well, too. And then, of course, you have the Asmans. I think it's Ida and Greta. Maybe I'm saying that wrong. They're the helmsmen and the helm officer, and I think the navigator. And they are also very interesting characters, too. They were twins who were basically the lone survivors of a human colony who were picked up and then raised by Klingons. So two very interesting characters there. Picard's good friend, Galad Ben Zoma. You have Pug Joseph, the engineer. Carter Greyhorse, the chief medical officer. And, just a lot of characters that I'm looking forward to getting to know more as I kind of get into more of these Stargazer books down the road, right? So anyway, they're on the way to the galactic barrier, and they're able to make it through the barrier just fine. So the shields between, Kirk's time and the Stargazer's time has beefed up enough where you can go through the barrier without the risk of turning one of your crew into, a Gary Mitchell. So they make it through just fine. And, a lot of the crew is very suspicious of this Serenity Santana, because of, like, the ESP and, like, the mild ability that she shows there. So, they're saying, we shouldn't trust her. The captain's asking Picard's opinion, and he's like, I think that we should trust her. So, there's some interesting stuff going on there. Now, as soon as they get into that area of space, basically they are under attack by the Nyud. And the Nyud are kind of like a diamond-shaped vessels. And I wish I'd kind of shown it a little bit bigger here, too, on the book, because you can't really see it. But those are the Nyud way back there, if you can see them. And diamond-shaped vessels, very fierce-looking, very warlike. Now, the one thing that I thought was pretty interesting about this, and I almost thought was going to turn into a twist a la Conundrum, right? Where, maybe these guys aren't even the bad guys, because you never speak to them, you never see them, there's no contact. It's an immediate, they see the Stargazer and they attack, right? Now, in the battle, basically, the very first battle, thanks to their shields, they're able to not completely get destroyed, but they take immense damage. The captain is killed. The commander is knocked into a coma, leaving, of course, Picard in charge. So this is how he gets his first command, right? Kind of thrust into it. And then he immediately is able to pull off some, pretty fantastic maneuvers. And score a victory against this first Niyud, right? And then here, that's where he's met with his first issues with his command, right? So now he has to make a decision. Do we bail and head for the galactic barrier without shields, because they got pretty tore up in that fight? Or do we take this Serenity Santana's advice, and do we go to her planet, get some help, get some new supplies, get our shields redone, and then try to go back? So a lot of the crew is saying, we can't trust her. Looks like she led us into a trap. But Picard goes ahead and follows his instinct, and he trusts her, and they go ahead and make their way to her planet. When they get to her planet, they are greeted with another Niyud ship, right? So Picard has to pull another kind of rabbit out of the hat. He's able to defeat that ship as well, and then they make contact with the planet, and they kind of are able to work with them then to get the supplies they need. Now, it does turn out that, yes, it was indeed a trap, but they kind of had no choice. So the Niyud kind of held the planet hostage, sent those two Magnians out to lure the Federation in to gauge their strength, was the idea. And then, again, I was thinking the whole time, this completely could be fabricated. And the Magnians could have a beef with these people, and they could have made up this story to bring in the Federation to take them out, right? So, interesting. And honestly, the way the book ended, it still even could be the case, right? Because the book ended without any contact with these people. So, just something interesting to think about. I kind of went into just ranting about the book without ever stopping to say I was going to start ranting about the book. Anyway, here we are now. We're almost to the end, really. So, boy, what else should I talk about? We did take some notes here. They do, and I like this. Let's touch on this a little bit. I have of course, Voyages of the Imagination here, and we do have a little bit of information from Michael Jan Friedman, but a little bit of it might not be even correct. Mike recalled, "I've always been fascinated by the story of Gary Mitchell. It was, to me, the best Star Trek episode ever. Where No Man Has Gone Before is such a personal and powerful story, and it is done so well. What could be more horrible than somebody so familiar as your best friend becoming the worst threat the galaxy has ever seen?" And of course, it had that comic book feel to it. I was a comic book fan, so it really impressed the hell out of me when I first saw it, and I've been revisiting it from time to time in my books. Now here's where I get a little confused. I threw in some other stuff there with a little bit of an explanation as to why the Klingons in the original series and the Klingons in the TNG era are different. I felt mine was probably as good, frankly, as any that's been offered. And I have to say, I wonder if he was thinking about a different book. Because for the life of me, I can't think of a mention hardly of Klingons in here. So, I don't know, maybe I missed it. If there's someone in there who's read the Valiant, let me know if there was a paragraph in there about Klingons that I didn't catch. For the most part, no, I don't think they were involved there. Other than I do remember them saying that transformed Kelvin was about twice the size of a Klingon or something. And again, thousands of tentacles, right? So anyway, there's a lot going on in this book. There is a mutiny against Picard, which he does successfully thwart, of course. There is a saboteur aboard the ship, who turns out not to even be a saboteur at all, rather just a Calvin who's getting a little bit too handsy with his tentacles, maybe, And there's also that he starts developing his little bit of interpersonal relationships, which I guess is kind of what the Stargazer series goes into a little bit more, where instead of developing and focusing more on these adventures, he looks at focusing on the relationships between these characters, which is honestly, that's pretty cool. That's something I'm looking forward to reading, because that is something that's kind of different than what you would typically get, out of your Star Trek adventure. So, now, how does the Valiant end? Let's cut to the chase, as they say. Basically, in the end, it really does kind of fly off and get a little bit crazy, right? So, they again, they dry off, they destroy the new that's there on the planet. They work together to both repair the planet's defenses and repair and modify and make even better the Stargazers. Um, Tractor beams, sensors, and I think maybe a few other systems as well get augmented by the Magnians using their psi powers, right? So like these guys are literally standing around a console, like like just shooting their brain beams directly in there to juice up the tractor beam, right? So that was very cool at the end, and I love how it shows. Again, it just shows Picard at his best. He's coming up with these strategies. He's being a leader. He's being the commander. We all the captain that we all know he becomes, right? And it's interesting. I love too like how he doesn't sit down in the chair for like the longest time, right? Because he's trying to he doesn't he's not ready to do that yet. So there's some very cool stuff going on there. But the action in this book is very well done. The ways that they come up with to cripple and disable and destroy these ships, and then also just the way they work through the saboteur, the way they work through the mutiny, just all very well done, right? And in the end, they basically lay waste to these Nayud, right? They destroy all of their ships in the area, and then they go after their freaking supply depot, right? And at first it was just a ruse. Picard was like, we're just going to say we're going to do it. We're going to draw out the saboteur, and then we're out of here. But then he's like, you know what? We're just going to do it. They go in with beefed up tractor beams with the Magnians, again, shooting their brain beams into them. You also get a very fun scene here, too, where, again, it's, Jomar the Calvin, he thinks that Santana is the saboteur. Santana thinks that Jomar is the saboteur. So you have this very specific little scene where, I don't know if you remember the pink lightning bolts that Gary Mitchell was shooting out. But anyway, she starts shooting the pink lightning bolts at Jomar, who is at this point transformed into his 1,000-tentacled form, right? So that was an interesting visual to have. And then this guy, he's trying to kill Picard too, but then, he's saved at the end by Pug Joseph, who I think becomes like the security officer, maybe. Anyway, there are a lot of very, very fun characters in here. And again, it's characters that you don't know. They're not your typical Star Trek characters. This is a new cast of characters that you get to meet. And then if you like them and you want to carry on, you want to learn more about them, there are, 7, 8, 9 of these Stargazer books or something, where they develop these relationships more and just kind of go further and further into that. So, very cool. Michael Jan Friedman is an excellent author, and that was a very fun book, and I am the better person for having read it and talked about it with all of you. So, anyway, thanks for hanging out and listening. Man, that turned into a 23-minute video, and I could have gone for another 7, but we can't do that. But you guys, you all know what's next. For sticking around till the end, you get to see the sneak peek. Oh, that's right. We're going to read this bad boy right here. And you know what? We've got a big bunch of snow coming here in Ohio tomorrow. Well, not a big bunch of snow, but it's going to snow. It's going to be cold. And I'm not going to want to do anything but sit down and read this book next to a fire with like a coffee in the morning. Oh man, that's going to be fantastic. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that, and even more so looking forward to coming back and then talking about this. This, I think, is going to be one of the funnest books that I talk about. And it might reach like a record. That might be like the first 40-minute talk about Trek rant on a book. And if it is, it is. So what? Who cares? This is my channel. I do what I want. As always, my friends, thanks for hanging out and watching. Live long and prosper. And we'll see you guys in the next one. You have a good night.